Okay, so we're going to start today by looking at families of functions, and today we're going to look at the linear functions, both proportional and non-proportional. And to do that, we should probably review some of the things that we know about linear equations and writing the rule. So when we write the rule for a linear equation, okay, we have y equals mx plus b, and that m, remember, is the slope, and the b is the y-intercept. Okay, and just a quick little review here for the slope. Remember, we're finding the change in y divided by the change in x, and the y-intercept is the y value when x is equal to 0. Okay, so we're going to go through both column A and column B, and we're going to go through these examples and kind of see if we can figure out what the difference between a proportional and a non-proportional linear relationship is. Okay, so we're going to start with example 1 in column A, and I'm really just going to start by drawing the graph. So I'm going to start with my points that I'm given and just plot those out, and then draw my line in. Okay. All right, and then we're being asked to write the rules, so I'm just going to go through, and this is two parts, kind of a review of linear functions and also trying to figure out what the difference between proportional and non-proportional is. Okay, so I'm going to look at my slope. So to find my slope, I'm looking at my change in y divided by my change in x. Okay, and from 0 to 2, I'm adding 2. And from 0 to 1, I'm adding 1. So when I go to find my slope, I'm going to take 2 divided by 1, which gives me 2. So I'm going to go ahead and write that into my rule. And then I also need to find my y-intercept. Okay, my y-intercept is in the table when x is 0. I'm looking at the y value for that, and that is 0. Okay, so I'm going to put that into my rule. So my equation for example 1 on side A is y equals 2x plus 0. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the second one. So example 1 in column B, again, I'm just going to plot the points. Okay, I'm 4, 6, 6, 2. Okay, and then I'm going to connect my line here. Okay, all right, so I've got my line drawn. Now I'm going to go through the table, find my change in y. 10 minus 4 is 6. Make sure that you're also checking your change in x, because it's not always 1. In this case, it's 2. And then we're going to divide. Negative 4 over 2 gives us a slope of negative 2. Okay, and then I don't actually see my y-intercept in this table, so I have to work backwards in the pattern to get it. Okay, so I'm going to work backwards by subtracting 2 on the x side, which will give me 0, and backwards on the y side by adding 4, which gives me 14. Okay, so my y-intercept is 14 in this case. Okay. All right, still not enough to figure out what the pattern is, so let's look at 2 more examples. Okay, so in column A, I'm working on this next example, so I'm going to just plot these points and connect them. Okay, and then I'm looking at my slope again, so my change in y divided by my change in x. Change in y, 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 4. Going to divide those to get my slope. Okay, so my slope is 1/2, and I'm going to leave it like that. For slope, we prefer to have a fraction to a decimal. Okay, and then again, I have to work backwards in the table, so I have to work backwards in the pattern by subtracting 2, backwards in the pattern by subtracting 1, and then that gives me a y-intercept of 0. Then we're going to move on to our last example, which is example 2 in column B. Plot your points. And connect them. You can plot all of the points. I just plotted enough so I could get the line drawn. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and look at the change in y over the change in x. Careful with your signs here. So -4 to -1, we're adding 3. And -2 to -1, we're adding 1. So when I divide these two, I get my slope to be 3. And my y-intercept happens to be right here in the table, which is 2. Okay. So if we go back and we look at these, and I'm making it small enough so that you can see both equations here. If we look at column A versus column B, hopefully you see here that the y-intercept in column A is 0. So that is the difference between a proportional and non-proportional. So proportional linear is what we have in column A. The y-intercept is 0, 0. And then non-proportional, and I'm just going to abbreviate that, the y-intercept is not 0, 0. Okay, so that's the only difference. They're both linear, they both look like lines on a graph, they both have a constant rate of change. The only thing that makes the difference between proportional and non-proportional is that proportional's y-intercept is 0. So it goes through the origin if you're looking at a graph. If you're looking at a rule, there is no y-intercept. Okay, so I am also going to post our vocab sheet filled out, so make sure that you look at that too for just some tips. But other than that, your homework tonight is just to decide whether something is proportional or non-proportional from a graph, a table, and an equation.